I'm very blessed to have a lot of things in my everyday life. It's very usual to derive a lot of your self-worth off of things that were essentially given to you in your life. I've been blessed with good looks. I'm not exactly the most attractive guy, but I'm also not just any ordinary fellow. I have a very substantial family. I'm the product of my mother and father, who I am very blessed to have, and I have one brother and a sister. My family have always physically been there for me. They've given me everything I really need in a childhood, and for that, I'm eternally grateful. I'm relatively smart. School comes pretty easy to me. I don't really have to work or study as hard in order to pass a subject. I'll never be a valedictorian, but I'm also not an idiot. At least, not entirely. Point is, I have things that a lot of people would kill to have. I'm blessed in this position I was born in, therefore I should be very happy. I should be living, yet instead, I feel very stagnant. I feel numb. I feel like I'm more so existing rather than living. I'm not a scholar when it comes to anything, and even less when it comes to emotions, but I'd imagine it's a bad thing when you start to feel like every day is the same cycle and that futility is inevitable. Life is short, and there are a few crucial decisions that you will make in it that will decide what you do with it, and whether or not you'll be happy in it. And that pains me to think about because I really want to be happy. I truly do. It's just impossible not to think about how so much can change in my life because of a few choices I make along the way. And it just gets me to a point where I simply never want to make these decisions, to where I want to avoid these choices indefinitely. I get this question a lot, and it always bugs me because I genuinely don't know what the answer to it could be. And that's, what do I want to be when I grow up? And I don't have the answer to that. I genuinely have no clue where my life is going to take me, and I have no idea how to commit to one thing in order to say, that's what I want to do with my life. Because I have no idea how much of me is going to enjoy doing one sole thing for the long term. I'm also really blessed enough to have a family that's financially capable of sending me to college. I can become whatever the education system and money can get me. But is that really all I want for my life? I don't know if it sounds like I'm just complaining, but I want more than just a stationary job as a doctor or a teacher. I want to do things that can let my creativity run wild and give me non-stop control over my endeavors. I want to be able to share experiences with people through writing, through video, through music, but just something creative that will keep me happy for the long term. I don't feel happy being a nobody. I want to be somebody, but I'm incredibly frightened by the thought of having my life end without having done anything to be proud of. My thoughts are incredibly intrusive. I get either limited amounts of sleep or an abundance of sleep at times because of how difficult it gets to just manage my thoughts. I'm always thinking. There's always things in the past that I wish I could have done better that keeps me awake at night. Reminiscing on past relationships that ended due to a lack of communication. This past year and a half really limited me to only staying close with my cousin, who's genuinely the best. He's my best friend, and probably the only person I truly trust with anything in my life. I know it wasn't my fault that many of these inconveniences happened, but I just can't shake this feeling. I should have done more to rejuvenate communications with friends. I should have done more to talk with people. I should have kept those that I loved in my life instead of letting time take them away from me. There are a million things that I want to do, and it makes it very difficult to sleep or even be the person that I try to be in my everyday life. Multiple thoughts of what I should have done, of what I could be, of what I want to do. It's an overflowing amount of things that I just wish I had more motivation to accomplish. And it's just a matter of when I will. And to be honest, I've gotten better at managing myself and my thoughts by either talking to someone or writing them down. My whole life I've had writing as my savior. Whether it was through a text, a notebook, or a Word document, writing was my only real way of expressing myself and staying somewhat sane throughout my young life. But sometimes my headspace gets a bit overwhelming, and it's really hard not to think of life as a repetitive cycle of finite decisions that ultimately lead to nothing. And it makes me judge whether or not this life that I have is worth living in its entirety. It's very weird because it completely contradicts with my ambitions. I want to be somebody, but I'm scared of not being inspired enough to do anything noteworthy and just being a nobody for the rest of my life. So, why would I turn to something like suicide as an answer if all it will do is make me a statistic, a number? My life would have ultimately led to nothing, and I would be proven right that doing so would leave me as a nobody. And maybe it's incredibly morbid and wrong to think that way, but at the end of the day, that's genuinely what keeps me away from ever physically harming myself. The thoughts are still there, because even if I genuinely believe that that's the only way out, the fear of becoming a statistic to suicide is what drives me away from the action itself. I'll say this though, I'm not suicidal, but I would be lying to you if I told you that the act of simply disappearing isn't a reoccurring thought in my life. And the only thing that I have stopping me from it is the potential that my life has to be great. And honestly, I'm really scared of what will happen to me once I die. More so, I'm scared of how I'll be remembered, because if I died right now, I would have nothing to my name, and that does not fly well with me. If I died right now, the only things to be remembered of me by my family would be he liked baseball, he was very smart, and hopefully he's in a better place now. And truly, I don't want that for me. I'm completely sold on the belief that I am more than that. All it is are a bunch of invasive thoughts that make me feel numb, that bring me closer and closer to dying, but the one thing that keeps me alive is the thought that I wouldn't have anything to affect the world positively if I did die today. If anything, all I would have done is affect the close circle around me that is my family negatively with my passing. Life is very unforgiving, but that's also what makes it very precious. You only have one life as the human you are, and personally, ending it prematurely is not how I want to end mine. I am a very emotional person. I experience intense happiness, but I also experience intense sadness. My highs are monumental, and my lows are detrimental. It's just the person I am, and if I could change it, I would. Being emotional has its positives. It makes it much easier to express myself in various forms. It makes it easier for my creativity to do whatever it wants. But it also has its negatives. Because of it, I can act out of character at times because of how I feel. Rational thinking is thrown out the window, and my heart is worn at my sleeve. The person I desperately try my best to protect is out in the open, and I can't do anything to stop it from being ridiculed or berated because that's the person I am. This is maybe unrelated, but I thought about it for a while, and I think it's best for me to share this about myself through this video rather than anywhere else. I've had only 2 panic attacks in my life that I can count that have impacted me emotionally ever since they've happened. I know there are individuals that suffer from severe anxiety and panic attacks much more often than I do, but I just want to share my own personal experience with them. Alright, well, when I was a freshman in high school, I played for the junior varsity baseball team, meaning I wasn't exactly good enough to be on the varsity team yet. But, I was getting there. It was early in the season, and we had a day game. I started at shortstop that day, and if you know me, I've never exactly had the strongest arm. It's not a noodle arm, but it's also not Tatis Jr.'s rocket of an arm. I'd say it's more comparable to Jose Altuve's arm, and if you're putting Altuve at shortstop, good luck. But back on track, they had me at short, and that day I had multiple balls hit to me, and I think I secured an out on only one of them. Most of them were routine ground balls that should have been automatic outs, and a few of the times I would just stop the ball without feeling it cleanly, but instead of letting the play die, I'd force a throw to first base, and in doing so, I'd give myself an additional throwing error since it was usually off the mark. Not only was I having a horrific fielding day, but I was also having a terrifying day at the plate. In the first inning, our team had gone up to hit through the batting order, which means I had 2 at-bats. And in those 2 at-bats, I struck out twice to record 2 out of the 3 outs in that same inning. It was horrifying for me, and that experience still frightens me to this day. I was taken out of the game from the second inning on, and I was just left in the dugout, feeling empty. I felt so lonely. My heavy breathing was all I could think about. I felt like Clayton Kershaw in the playoffs, except I was 15 and felt like the worst player on the team. This whole time I was standing near the end of the dugout, trying not to cry and just staring blankly at the field. Until out of nowhere, a senior from the varsity team came by and hugged me from behind. We'll call him Tony. He just embraced me and told me that everything was going to be okay. And I broke down after that. I was probably sobbing while hearing him comfort me when he had no real reason to do so. I had no idea how to feel. I didn't even talk to Tony that much. He just came up to me knowing I had separated myself from the others in the dugout. I was trembling, and he was there for me. That was probably the best thing that could have happened to me to end off that already terrible day. I didn't really even get closer to Tony after all of that. It was just a one-day thing, and after that, we went back to doing our own thing during practices. It was weird, but I definitely won't ever forget about it. The generosity that guy had to comfort me that day won't ever be forgotten. My second panic attack happened during quarantine, in the middle of the school year actually, and it's arguably the worst I've ever felt emotionally. I had a project which was to make a video presenting yourself using some stupid editor on the phone. I didn't care to use that editor, so I just reused the intro to a podcast that some of my friends and I wanted to start doing called the Casual Dudes Podcast. I presented that video to the classroom through a Google Meet, and very quickly I found out that my teacher was going to be very strict with the whole edit this video on your phone thing. He then proceeded to speak to me live in front of everyone and tell me that he wouldn't accept the video despite it being the same assignment he wanted, except edited on Adobe Premiere instead of iMovie on an iPad. Under normal circumstances, usually I'd be fine sticking up for myself and telling my teacher that getting absolutely no credit for a video that I still worked on is wrong. But in this case, things were just weird. I couldn't stop moving my leg. I was trembling all over. My throat was dry. I broke into a cold sweat. A large buildup of emotions overcame me. I didn't know what to do with them. I understood how stage fright felt, and it had that similar feeling at first. But this was unlike anything I've ever experienced. It had a gradual buildup that left me feeling incredibly overwhelmed and suffocated, where it felt like a chore to speak and respond to my teacher. I simultaneously felt empty, but also felt the overwhelming urge to throw up. Shortly after he spoke to me, I left the Google Meet prematurely. After that, I just laid on my bed and let loose. I cried tears that I didn't know I could weep. I was so overcome with emotions that I had laid deep inside of me, and everything that I thought I knew about myself was completely exposed for the few moments that I had crying on my bed. It was so scary. I had never felt more vulnerable in my life. I had no one to comfort me, no one to give me a hug. It was just me, alone, trapped in my room, fully knowing that I was emotionally torn in half for that short while. Frankly, it just frightened me how quick it took for me to emotionally break down like that. I don't remember having anything going wrong for me at the time. Maybe the lack of physical communication with people due to quarantine diminished my social skills, but this feeling was so abrupt. I'll never forget that feeling because it absolutely tore me. And it was all because of an online confrontation over a stupid video project of all things. It's weird. It pains me to remember these experiences, but I think it's important to do so, because at the end of the day, I know very little about myself to begin with. I sure as hell had no idea I would react in the way I did towards an online confrontation with a teacher of all people. And there's a large difference between who you are and who you portray yourself to be. The person that you understand most and the fraction of that person that you let others see of you. And the person I think I am isn't exactly the most stable. I'm really good at making myself seem like this kind-hearted kid that likes to write, loves to play baseball, likes making videos, the list goes on and on. But in reality, that doesn't really mean anything to me since I haven't gone far enough in any of those subjects. And I know I'm young, but I'm so sick and tired of using I'm young as an excuse, because once I can't use I'm young anymore as an excuse, that will be when I realize that I've wasted all of my time. And I don't want to do that. Sometimes I feel like the person I am is bitter. I'm a person that doesn't know how to express themselves properly without intense preparation. I'm a person that gets easily frightened at the thought of who they're gonna be in life. I am a person that likes to mimic having a perfect life when in reality I'm just as insecure as the next guy. I'm an overthinker, and I don't feel safe with a lot of things I put out about myself. To be honest, I don't even feel entirely safe putting this video out to begin with. I've debated scrapping this video in its entirety for a while, but writing it has benefited me greatly. It's helped me clear out my head when I felt like there was nothing I could do to help myself, so I didn't want to disrespect it without finishing it. I know I'm not the only person that experiences these kinds of emotions. At first, writing this video was just going to be my way of coping with these intense feelings and thoughts I've had recently. But then I realized if just one person that watches this video could relate to how I feel, and if watching this video could help them feel understood in some way, then that would mean the world to me. I would never wish this sort of duress on anyone. Writing about it is just my way of letting it all out. Getting the creative juices flowing, for me, is the best medicine. And being able to work on this video has been incredibly therapeutic for me. I know it may not help the next guy as much as it helps me, but if you're ever looking for a way to express yourself, communicate. Communicate with anyone or anything about whatever you want. There are no specifics when it comes to communication, so you could do it through any creative means, or even through a simple text to a close friend. It's the best way to keep yourself from feeling overwhelmed. Personally, writing has been my coping mechanism for most of my life, and being able to make these videos help make it all a lot better. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna try to take a nap.